King crab. If you visit Alaska and only have the chance to try a few local foods, king crab should be high on your list. The legs are huge, the meat is tender and naturally sweet, and when they are served fresh with a little melted butter, there is really not much else you need. Alaska's cold coastal waters are home to several types of crab, but king crab is the one that has become especially famous. It is also a big part of the state's fishing industry, particularly around the Bering Sea. For many visitors, sitting down to a plate of fresh Alaskan king crab is one of those meals that makes the trip feel real. Alaskan salmon. Salmon is everywhere in Alaska, and there is a good reason for that. The state is home to 5 main species of Pacific salmon: king, sockeye, coho, pink, and chum. They are not all the same either. Some are rich and oily, while others have a lighter flavor and firmer texture. You will find salmon grilled, baked, smoked, dried, and prepared in many traditional ways. For Alaska Native communities, salmon has been an important source of food for generations. So when you sit down to a plate of freshly caught salmon in Alaska, you are eating something that is deeply connected to the land, the rivers, and the people who live there. Halibut. Halibut is another fish you will come across quite often in Alaska, especially if you are spending time in one of the coastal towns. Pacific halibut can grow to an enormous size, but what people really care about is the meat. It is thick, white, mild, and flaky, without having an overpowering fishy taste. That makes it easy to enjoy, even if you are not normally a big seafood person. Restaurants might grill it with simple seasoning, bake it with herbs, or fry it until the outside is crisp. Fresh Alaskan halibut is one of those foods where keeping things simple usually works best. Smoked salmon. There is something special about smoked salmon because it shows how Alaskans have traditionally made use of the fish available to them. Before modern refrigeration, smoking was an important way to preserve salmon and keep it edible for much longer. The process also gives the fish a deep, smoky flavor that you do not get from fresh salmon, depending on how it is prepared. Smoked salmon can be soft and delicate or firm and intensely flavored. You might find it served with crackers, bread, cream cheese, or simply eaten by itself. It is also commonly packaged for visitors to take home, which makes it one of the easiest tastes of Alaska to remember after a trip. Halibut fish and chips. Fish and chips may not have started in Alaska, but the Alaskan version has its own reason to be on the menu. Instead of using the fish commonly found in traditional British fish and chips, many Alaskan restaurants use locally caught halibut. Thick pieces of the fish are covered in batter and fried until golden and crispy. Inside, the halibut stays tender and flaky. Add some fries, tartar sauce, and a little lemon, and you have a pretty straightforward meal that works especially well after a long day of exploring. It is familiar enough for almost anyone to enjoy, but the local halibut gives it a distinctly Alaskan character. Reindeer sausage. Reindeer sausage is one of the foods that can catch a visitor's attention almost immediately. Reindeer were introduced to Alaska from Siberia in the late 19th century, and reindeer herding eventually became part of life in some Alaskan communities. Today, reindeer sausage is usually made by combining reindeer meat with other meats and seasonings. The result is savory, slightly smoky, and richer than an ordinary sausage. You might find it beside eggs and potatoes at breakfast or served inside a sandwich. It is especially popular around Anchorage, where it has become a familiar part of the local food scene. If you want to try something you probably will not find on an everyday menu back home, this is a good place to start. Alaskan oysters. Alaskan oysters are a little different from the seafood most visitors expect to find in the state. They are raised in the cold coastal waters around Alaska, where the low temperatures allow them to grow slowly. That can give them a firm texture and a clean, briny taste. They are often served raw on the half shell, although some restaurants grill or bake them. Eating oysters might not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think about Alaska, but the state's enormous coastline creates excellent conditions for shellfish farming in certain areas. For someone who enjoys seafood, they are worth trying while they are fresh and local. Akutaq. Akutaq is one of the foods on this list that has a story very different from the seafood found in Alaskan restaurants. It is a traditional Alaska Native food that is sometimes called Eskimo ice cream, although it is not really ice cream at all. Traditional versions can include whipped animal fat, water, and wild berries, while modern recipes may use different ingredients. The exact preparation varies between communities, and that is part of what makes akutaq interesting. Berries such as salmon berries, blueberries, and crowberries can add a sweet and slightly tart flavor. It is a food that shows how people living in Alaska developed recipes around the ingredients that were actually available to them. Alaska sourdough bread. Sourdough bread has a surprisingly strong connection to Alaska's gold rush history. During the gold rush era, people living and working in remote areas could not always walk into a store and buy fresh yeast. A sourdough starter, however, could be kept alive and carried from one place to another. As a result, sourdough became closely associated with miners and frontier life. And experienced miners were even given the nickname sourdough. Today, Alaskan sourdough is still enjoyed with seafood, soups, stews, and plenty of butter. The bread itself is familiar, but knowing how it became part of Alaska's history makes it a little more interesting when you sit down to eat it. Salmonberry. Salmonberries are one of the wild foods that give Alaska's cuisine a completely different side. They grow naturally in many parts of the state and look somewhat like raspberries, although their color can range from yellow and orange to deep red. The berries are soft, juicy, and slightly tart, and they are usually enjoyed when they are in season. People use them in jams, pies, muffins, sauces, and other desserts, while some simply eat them fresh. They have also been gathered by Alaska Native communities for generations. If you happen to come across salmonberry products while traveling through Alaska, they are worth trying because they are much more connected to the state's wild landscape than an ordinary supermarket berry. Alaskan blueberry pie. Blueberry pie is a familiar dessert, but using wild Alaskan blueberries gives it a local twist. Wild blueberries grow across parts of the state and can have a stronger, more concentrated flavor than the large cultivated berries commonly found in supermarkets. During berry season, people gather them and use them for everything from pancakes and muffins to jams and pies. In a pie, the berries become soft and juicy, with just enough sweetness and tartness to balance the buttery crust. It is not an extravagant dessert, and that is exactly what makes it appealing. After a day outside in Alaska's cool weather, a warm slice of berry pie can be a pretty satisfying way to finish a meal. Reindeer hot dog. The reindeer hot dog is probably one of the easiest Alaskan foods to try if you are looking for something casual. You get a familiar hot dog bun, but the sausage inside has a different flavor because it contains reindeer meat, usually combined with other meats and seasonings. It has a savory taste and a slightly smoky quality that makes it stand out from a regular beef or pork hot dog. Reindeer hot dogs are particularly associated with Anchorage and can be found at casual food stands and local events. There is nothing complicated about the dish, but sometimes that is exactly what you want. It gives you a taste of something local without turning the meal into a big production. King salmon. King salmon deserves its own mention because it is the largest of Alaska's 5 Pacific salmon species and one of the richest in flavor. It is also known as Chinook salmon, and its high-fat content gives the meat a soft, almost buttery texture. That richness makes it especially good when grilled, roasted, or cooked over an open flame. You do not need a complicated sauce to make it taste good. A little seasoning and careful cooking are often enough. King salmon has also been an important food for Alaska Native communities for generations, so its importance goes well beyond the restaurant plate. When it is caught fresh and prepared locally, you get to experience one of the foods that has helped define Alaska's relationship with its rivers and coastal waters. Alaskan crab cakes. Crab cakes are a good option if you want to enjoy Alaskan crab without sitting there trying to crack open a pile of shells. The cakes are made by combining crab meat with ingredients such as breadcrumbs, herbs, seasonings, and sometimes mayonnaise before shaping and cooking them until the outside turns golden brown. A good crab cake should still taste like crab, rather than being mostly filler. Alaskan crab works particularly well because of its naturally sweet meat. Restaurants may serve crab cakes as an appetizer or alongside other seafood, and they can be a nice choice when you want something a little different from a plate of crab legs. Wild berry jam. Wild berry jam is simple, but it brings together several things that are important to Alaskan food culture. The state has a wide variety of berries growing naturally in its forests, tundra, and other wild areas. Depending on the region, you may find jams made from blueberries, salmon berries, crowberries, raspberries, and other local berries. The fruit is cooked with sugar until it becomes thick and spreadable, then used on bread, pancakes, pastries, or desserts. Preserving berries has also been useful in a place where many fruits are seasonal and the growing season can be short. For visitors, a jar of wild berry jam can be more than just a sweet spread. It is a small taste of the plants and landscapes that make Alaska different from almost anywhere else.